Have you ever wished you could be as great a leader as Tony Soprano or Walter White? Yeah, maybe, but I'm not going to suggest you follow in their footsteps. In this video, I'm going to tell you who I think are the most inspiring leaders in my favorite TV shows and what I think we can learn from them. There's going to be some very mild spoilers, so if you're actively watching any of these shows right now, you might want to skip those ones. Hey, how's it going? This is Scruffy Leadership, a YouTube channel about management and leadership aimed particularly at software engineers. My name's Ben, and I've been a leader and a manager in the tech industry for over 25 years. All right, let's get on with the list. Number 1, Leslie Knope. When you first meet Leslie Knope in Parks and Recreation, you think she's probably going to be a disaster. She doesn't really seem to understand the world she's found herself in. She's too idealistic, too hopeful. And yet, throughout the show, she never lets go of her integrity. She never stops fighting for what she believes in. And then there's this.
Leslie Knope gets as many favors as she needs. Can I ask why? Because she's the kind of a person who uses favors to help other people.
I love this. The people who work with Leslie know that while she's ambitious for the city she works for and her country and everyone she works with, not really for herself. So just by being herself, she builds relationships that lead to people wanting to help her, wanting her to succeed, even if they don't really care about what she's doing. Leslie's leadership is all about relationships. Number 2, Malcolm Reynolds. Malcolm Reynolds, captain of the Serenity in the tragically short-lived Firefly, is one of those leaders that inspires total loyalty from his team by leading from the front. He comes up with the crazy schemes and then he plays an active and usually dangerous part in them. Everyone knows he's not going to ask them to do something he wouldn't do himself. But I want to point something out about this. Each of his team members has skills that Malcolm doesn't have. For example, Kaylee can fix the ship and Wash can fly it. Malcolm could probably do bits of those jobs, but nowhere near as well as Kaylee and Wash. And I think this is a point that's sometimes misunderstood. Leaders don't have to be able to do all the things that their people do, but they have to be responsible and accountable for them. You have to be willing to take responsibility for when things go wrong and give credit when things go well. Number 3, June Osborne. June Osborne, the hero of The Handmaid's Tale, doesn't choose to become a leader, and no one else chooses it for her, really. She just becomes a leader out of necessity, and this is often what happens to software engineers before they're given formal leadership responsibility. And why does this happen? Well, in June's case, it's because she can't stand the world she's found herself living in, and although at first she's motivated mostly by finding her daughter and escaping from that world, she spends most of her energy actually helping the most vulnerable people she comes across.
She did this. June. Your June. She did this. She did everything.
So to translate that into the world of work, I'm not suggesting we should all be revolting against senior leadership, but rather that if we're looking out for the people that need the most help and giving them what help we can, then we're showing the kind of leadership that June models. Number 4, Captain Holt. Captain Holt is one of the most beloved characters in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and one of the people that loves him the most is Amy Santiago. Captain Holt doesn't want her to hero worship him, but he does want her to learn from him. And so he concentrates a lot of his leadership energy into mentoring and coaching her. Sometimes he does it explicitly, but a lot of the time when a leader is coaching or mentoring someone in their team, they do it more by asking questions, by showing rather than telling, and by listening. And this is why Amy doesn't always realize that Captain Holt is teaching her.
I know you may not see yourself as my mentor, but...
Of course I do. I've been mentoring you all this time. This is day 1,282 of a 9-year mentorship I had mapped out for you. Under ordinary circumstances, I wouldn't reveal this to you until day 3,300.
It was real. There was a binder.
Number 5, Midge Maisel. Midge Maisel is the star of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, about a 1950s housewife who becomes a stand-up comedian in a world in which stand-up comedians are always men. It might not be obvious that Midge is a leader, but she really is. In everything she does, she's leading the way for other women who might want to get into comedy. And in fact, she ends up being a mentor and a leader for many of the men in her life as well.
This is very serious. I mean, if this gets out, every working woman will want to get paid just as much as a man to do the exact same job, and our entire civilization will collapse.
Midge is always learning. She doesn't give up when a show goes wrong. She learns from it. She learns partly by her own intuition, but she also listens to the people around her. She listens most of the time to her manager, Susie. She listens to Lenny Bruce, her mentor. She doesn't consider herself to be better than any of these people, but she does consider herself to be better than the limitations that others put on her would suggest. And that's great leadership. Number 6, the Doctor. Doctor Who is one one of the longest running TV shows and one of my all-time favourites. The Doctor has been played by, depending on how you count it, at least 14 actors, and each time a new actor steps into the role, the character changes. The Doctor has been humble at times and hubristic at others, thorough at times and careless at others. But no matter what, the one thing that's always been true is that the Doctor cares about the people they lead. These people have been called assistants, companions, and friends, but they've all looked to the Doctor for guidance, safety, support, and direction, and the Doctor has taken that role seriously and has consistently cared about them. It's often pointed out by the Doctor's enemies that this caring is a weakness, but we, the viewer, know that this isn't true, that it's actually the Doctor's greatest strength. And I hope you can agree with me that it's the greatest strength of any leader, that they truly care for the people they lead and then earn their trust and respect. Number 7, Ted Lasso. One of Ted Lasso's greatest strengths as a leader is that he listens. And he doesn't just listen, he shows people that he's listening and that he's heard what they say. Even if he doesn't agree with them, and even if he doesn't end up doing what they want, they always know that their voice has been heard. This is called active listening, and it's an incredibly important skill for leaders.
Woo-wee. Sounds to me like someone's trapped inside life's most complicated shape, a love triangle.
Another great quality of Ted is that he's not afraid to show his vulnerabilities to his team. He doesn't do this in a way that will undermine their confidence in him, but he does do it in a way that lets them know that he's human like them. And this helps him to build trust with a team that are initially very suspicious of him. After all, he's an American who's come to England to run a football team, even though he himself admits he knows nothing about football, at least at the beginning. Number 8, Michonne. Michonne has to fill some pretty big shoes when her husband Rick Grimes goes missing on The Walking Dead. One of her greatest qualities as a leader is her willingness to make tough decisions even when those decisions aren't popular. I'd like to point out another interesting aspect of Michonne. When she first arrives in the show, she's a loner. She's not really a leader at all at that stage, although she does in a literal sense lead the 2 armless zombies that walk around with her. So her journey in the show is perhaps one that might feel familiar to you, going from being just responsible for herself and preferring it that way to being responsible for an entire community. And she lives up to that responsibility in a very quiet, unshowy way. She's not the kind of leader that needs to be constantly reminding everyone that she's in charge. She just gets on with it. Number 9, Michael Scott. Michael Scott, one of my favourite characters from TV. In many ways, he's a terrible leader. He makes awful decisions. He's childish and petty. He oversteps boundaries all the time, and he has very little sense of what management is really about. But if you really watch the show, you'll see another side to Michael. He communicates clearly and frequently, sometimes too much for sure, but it's rare that his team are left wondering what's going on. And most of the ways in which he communicates are extremely positive and empathetic. Although he often uses humour in a way that's not appropriate at work, he does sometimes find the right way to help the people around him to feel better about what's happening through his use of humour. And then there's his authenticity, which particularly shines through in one of my favourite Michael Scott scenes. No one else from work shows up for Pam's art exhibit, and she's about to pack it up when Michael arrives.
Wow! You did these freehand?
Yep.
My God, these could be tracings. Oh. Look at this one. Wow. You nailed it. I mean, there's my window and there's my car. Is that your car?
Uh-huh.
I'm really proud of you.
Finally, number 10, maybe a bit of a wild card, Daenerys Targaryen. Okay, so Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones went a bit off the rails at the end of the show, but if we ignore the later seasons, Daenerys was an exceptionally inspirational leader. And one of the traits that makes her such a great leader is actually her adaptability. Particularly in the early series, she encounters situations that would surely cause almost anyone else to just give up and walk away, but Daenerys never gives up. Instead, she adapts. She finds a new way to proceed that will keep her and her team, her army, on track. She has a clarity of vision that she communicates equally clearly so that everyone who follows her knows exactly why they're following her and where they're following her to. And that's perhaps where things went wrong for Daenerys in the final series, incidentally, is that she stopped following that vision and people stopped knowing why they were following her. So there we are. What did you think? Did I miss out your favourite TV leader? Let me know in the comments. And if you've enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you'd click the like button, maybe even subscribe. This helps this video and my other videos be seen by more people. Bye. See you soon.